So many people, when they start their business, they start it because they are trying to get away from a job, trying to earn a better living. They know their skill set, but they don't necessarily, they've never really thought about the actual function of running a business. And so they get started, and maybe with a stroke of good luck, they build a following, and next thing they know, they're off to the races with a business and they're earning a good living. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but eventually the concept of actually running the business and having to make sure that things happen in a consistent way starts to take over. And it's more than just performing that thing that it is that you do when you were an employee. You used to be an employee somewhere, you were doing the job, and you decided that you could do it better than your employer, and so you started this business, or for whatever reason you started a business, and the reality of that business starts to sink in, and there are things that you have to do in order to make that business successful. So that's what we're here to talk about today in our next version of our webinar. So welcome. My name's Carl Baker. I own a accounting and consulting firm called Baker CFO Advisory. You can check us out on our website, bakercfoadvisory.com, and you can find our contact information there. You can find a little bit more about me there as well. Make sure that you do link or like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will see the output of our monthly webinars. And again, I just thank you for taking the time. You'll also see that we've started a new format. We're testing a new format on our YouTube channel. This might have a couple different iterations over the next couple months, but wanted to start this. So let us know if you have any comments there. So what are we here to talk about today? You heard in my introduction, last month we did a session on the actual thought process and putting together systems and standard operating procedures in place. Well, I'm drilling into that a little bit more this month with let's erase some of the uncertainty, the confusion, and just help you take the first steps. So we're going to do a session today on what are the first 5 standard operating procedures that you should be doing. And this is my opinion. And as we get into this, you're going to see that, and you might start to say, you're going to see that there's not a lot of accounting that we're talking about here today. I started off this after my introduction. I started off with the introduction of my firm, and I said that we are an accounting firm, and that's true. But I'm also what I call a fractional CFO, a consulting CFO. Spent many years as a corporate auditor, but I've also spent many years as a fractional CFO, where I am helping CEOs inside their business on a full or part-time basis, full interim basis, or permanent part-time basis. And many of the things that I have done and many of the things that CFOs do don't necessarily have anything to do with accounting and debits and credits and those sort of things. In a recent, and I take note of this by noting in a recent Wall Street Journal article, the CFO of Zoom. I could have recorded this on Zoom today. I'm not using Zoom, but I could have. Everybody has heard of Zoom. COVID really catapulted Zoom's popularity. But the CFO of Zoom has said that they see themselves as a partner with the CEO. They spend part of their time in strategy, part of their time in actual operations. And in fact, that article said that the Zoom CEO uses the CFO to help in operations so that the CEO can focus on strategy and those sort of things. Oftentimes, the other thing I would say is oftentimes as a business owner, i.e. the CEO, but the business owner is functioning. When they start to bring in advisors, oftentimes one of the first hires they hire is a CFO. So that CFO instantly becomes an operations partner, a strategy partner, more than just debits and credits. And so I have quite a bit of experience in working with this, and I just know that assessing SOPs is a very important thing, and is one of the first things that you can do to start to actually operationalize and systemize your business. So with that in mind, let's move to the next slide and get started with this. So I've used SOP, and I've actually defined it in my introductions, but what is an SOP? What does that word SOP mean? It's a standard operating procedure. Look back to my last session and you'll hear us talk about systems. SOP is a synonym for that, and sort of. And so we're going to talk about that. Why are SOPs important? As you think about this as you're running a business, why is an SOP important? Well, you don't want to, every time you perform a function, you don't want to try to figure out how to perform that function. How is it that we send invoices out? How is it that we onboard clients? How is it that we hire somebody? You want to have a system in place so that you are consistent in that, so that you save time, so that you make it easier right now, maybe at the beginning stage of your business cycle, you are the only one. If you're a business owner, a closely held business, and a sole proprietorship or whatever, you're the only one performing these functions, and you start to add people and you ask them to help. Well, you want to have SOPs in place so that they know how to do their job without them just figuring it out, and without them having to ask you for each step each time. So you want to make it easier for onboarding. You want to save time, both for you and for staff, have that consistency. And then you want to, of course, all of that is sort of memorialized by saying we want to reduce errors, reduce confusion, and just make things simpler as you're performing the conduct of your business. So an introduction there. What 5 have I started with? Well, we'll go through these, but I'll tell you, we're not going to talk about accounting things too much today. We're certainly not going to talk about financial reporting, debits and credits. Again, we're going to talk about what is it that a business owner needs to do to be as successful as possible, as quickly as possible, and to put those systems in place to operationalize and to kickstart the business as fast as possible. So there are lots of SOPs, and basically, as I said last time, if you're performing a function a couple times, you will want to systemize or systematize or put protocols and procedures in place so that the next time you have those instructions in place, so to speak. But at some point you have to prioritize. There might be 50 SOPs eventually as the business grows, but you can't and you don't need to do 50 on day one. I think there are a handful that you should do sooner rather than later. And they all involve what are the things that are going to have the most immediate impact that will help your business? What are the things that you're doing over and over again? What are the things that you're doing to help build a following? What are the things that you need to do to that might involve multiple people? The other thing I'll say, and I'm actually a member of a BNI chapter. It's the BNI Smart chapter in Springfield, Missouri, and I was listening to the founder of BNI to his podcast recently, and he was talking about vision and leadership. And it was interesting, as I was recording this, I saw that this was one of his most recent podcasts. So it was good fortune that this came up. But he was talking about systems, and he said a couple things that I'm going to say here. He said vision plus systems plus culture equals success. And he was emphasizing the importance of systems. And he said, you don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. And he said it again. I'm going to say it again, because many people have good intentions about building their business and figuring things out. And they oftentimes will say, oh, I meant to do that, or I meant to do these. Well, the difference between vision and success is that execution of that business, memorializing and then executing on it. He was talking about it in terms of B&I success, but I can easily apply that to a closely held business as they're ramping up their business. So I'll say it again. When you're a business owner and you are trying to ramp up your business, you of course have things you're meaning to do. And he said, you don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. So at some point, these systems are ever important for determining how you do your business, and I would say are some of the main keys to success as you build your business. So let's get started with, we're going to go through 5, and on our website we'll have a white paper that memorializes these in a little bit different fashion, but materially the same. Really, it's just different order. And you can go to our website and see our white paper there, and our series of white papers, which I just think are great and give you some nuggets. And we'll talk about those some more again later. But step number 1, or SOP number 1, customer onboarding process. As we think about what it is you're doing in an early stage, you're trying to build a following. None of the other things that I've talked about or that you're thinking about matter if you don't build a following. What's your accounting software? At the beginning, it doesn't matter on moment 0. What is your corporate structure? At the beginning, on moment 0, it doesn't matter. Those things are all there. There's lots of things that matter, but at moment 0, none of it matters if you don't have any customers, or if you don't have a path to clientele or customers. So SOP number 1 is the customer onboarding process. There needs to be a set of steps to onboard a new customer efficiently so that they have a good experience. Key elements to include in that SOP include the initial contact, maybe some welcome correspondence, setting expectations about delivery, setting expectations about your style of communication, setting expectations about time frame, billing, your invoicing, and those sort of things. So to establish a good experience with your clientele, with your customer base, have a good customer onboarding process to kickstart that relationship in a proper way. Maybe this should have been SOP number 1 because the sales process is what triggers the need for an onboarding process, but we'll stick with this. So the sales process, as I said, you need to build that following. You need to have that customer base. So how is it we're going to do that? Is it going to be on a wing and a prayer, or are you going to have some sort of a system such that your pipeline fills up, such that you have a sales funnel, such that you have a lead base, a lead machine coming in, and then when that happens, how does that happen, and what is it that you do with that system? So standardizing how leads are captured, have a system. Some other key elements are to have a lead intake form to memorialize. Maybe that is simply within a CRM entry, making sure that you capture all the relevant data time and time again to make sure that you are being consistent in that onboarding process. Make sure that there is a follow-up schedule, and maybe that follow-up schedule has some rigidity, maybe it has some fluidity in its application, but in one way or the other, setting expectations for follow-up with your prospective clientele, with your communication with your customers once that happens. Certainly in the sales process, we want to ensure that that process is ongoing, consistent, policies are in place so that we know how often to follow up, et cetera, to make sure that no leads fall through the cracks. So that's item number 2, or SOP number 2. SOP number 3, you need people. Surely you don't want to be the only one functioning and providing, operating your business for the rest of your life. So you're eventually going to want to, if you're a growing business, you want to onboard staff members to help you. So what does that look like? You certainly want some consistency there in your process. So you want to have steps for bringing a new team member on board. Probably have some sort of a checklist. These are the things we do. These are the templates that we follow. This is what our offer letter looks like. This is what our onboarding welcoming letter looks like. This is what our file setup. This is what our HR system looks like. Probably have job descriptions for each person, for each role. So that will be important. Having those job descriptions, having a plan in place. I mentioned in one of the bullets here, having a training plan in place. Having a good orientation systemic system for onboarding the staff and making sure they're having a good experience. That last phrase resonates with me. The check-in process. They figuratively go to their desk, start to sign up for all their HR benefits. They start to get logged into their systems, if that is germane to your business, and they start to do things within the business. But how's it going? Checking in with them, making sure that they are having a good onboarding experience will be very important. And having those SOPs to collect all of that and to memorialize that is important. All right, so we have talked about the sales process. We've talked about getting getting your customer base and building that following and making sure your customers have a good experience, making sure that your new staff have a good experience. Well, what is, if you bring in customers, but you don't ever ask them to pay, and if you don't set those expectations early and often with good communication, then it doesn't really matter. So the closing the loop of that service cycle and the revenue cycle is to eventually bill. So SOP number 4 is what sort of financial tracking, invoicing, and collections process do you want to have, do you have in place, and standardizing that to the extent possible. So standardizing what the invoices look like, standardizing how often they are sent, standardizing the collections process, standardizing your payment terms. Are invoices due on receipt? Are they due in 30 days? Are they due in a week? Are they due in phases? What is your exception process when a client or customer asks for a variance to your terms? What sort of policies do you have in that place? So key elements to this SOP obviously includes the invoice creation, sending, all the follow-up procedures for late payments, of course, recording in accounting software. And, there's the one reference to accounting software, recording that on an accrual basis, a cash basis, and understanding the generally accepted accounting principles relating to your revenue recognition and to what extent you want to follow that. The obvious benefit for this is that money will eventually come in the door, and that those monies then will be used to pay the staff that you've hired, pay yourself, give you a return on your business. But this is a good loop to close as we're thinking about the customer base, the sales base, and providing a good experience for all the jobs that you're creating for the people that have come in as well. All that has to be funded some way. So this is again an early an early SOP, an early set of procedures that will be a key to success in the early cycle. SOP number 5, and then after that, there are all kinds of procedures and standard operating procedures that will need to be put into place. But again, this is early cycle. And I just wanted to provide some clarity on that. So SOP number 5 is the marketing content creation, publishing to make sure that sales cycle continues. I know marketing is different than sales, but you want to raise awareness to the market as to what problems you're solving, to sort of turn on that vacuum cleaner, or to turn on that, to magnetize your message and to bring people into your fold and to get them closer to that sales funnel. So building that sort of a machine to ensure branding, communication, and making sure that it's done on a predictive basis. So what sort of content calendar do you have? What sort of workflow do you have? And posting that schedule in a way where everybody that is performing all those tasks know what needs to happen, when, and what needs to happen, when does it need to happen, how, and where does this output go. So all of those things are important and are an important key to the early success of a business, I think. And again, I hope you can see where those 5 SOPs are important for the early stage of a business. How to document these SOPs? If I think back, I can be old school. I'm old enough to know that all policies and procedures ended up in some sort of a 3-ring binder on a desk, and every staff member had their version of that. Obviously, that doesn't happen these days. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Generally, we're a paperless society, so many of these things might still be in the form of a policy and procedure manual, an SOP manual that could be printed and put into a binder if needed by using a Word document or some sort of piece of software that is easily printed. But many times, that's just one example. I'm hearing more and more use of video technology to actually memorialize how procedures are done. It's kind of a KISS method, which seems pretty brilliant to me. It's a keep it simple, stupid approach. Somebody will sit at a computer and using Loom or some other software. And by the way, in our white paper, we do list several software packages that are available that many companies are using, but Loom is one of them, where you can actually perform a set of procedures and record all those steps. That video then becomes your SOP. And instead of having the old school written narrative, you have a video. And that video says, when we do this, this is how you do it. And then you do it and it gets recorded. It's pretty cool. So that is one way to do that. And certainly some way have some sort of a step-by-step guide that is effective in helping those who are performing these procedures, helping them know how to do it. So keep it concise, actionable, include screenshots, visuals, maybe a full video, as we talked about, and then store these in an accessible location for the team, whether that is in a Google Drive or some sort of a portal, or on your network, or in your enterprise platform, or your practice software. In some fashion, have a place where people know, when we do these things, this is where they go. And not just for these 5, but for any and all SOPs that you do. So I think that's important, and we'll move on from there. So I've referenced this guide, this white paper, and I think it's great. I've read it. I wrote it. it has great examples. We have a whole series of white papers, and if you go to our website, this is one of them. You can request us to send you that by giving us an email address, and I think there are many great nuggets that you'll get out of those, and I just encourage people to go to that. So, a final closing, really restating what I've been talking about all along. By implementing these 5 SOPs, you'll create systems that save time, reduce stress, ensure consistency, set your business on a path to run smoothly, even when you're not overseeing every detail. And hopefully you're not overseeing every detail. You're starting to rise above and work on the business instead of in the business. And really the only way you can do that is if you set up systems. And I think these 5 are 5 good early stage SOPs to start with. And there are certainly lots more, but these will give you the opportunity to have success in the things that need to happen to really kickstart your business. Ramping up your customer following, adding staff members, making sure that your pipeline continues on, and so forth. So I think that is good. And I'll just say, stay tuned, continue watching. Next month, we'll have another session where we're going to talk about, for a closely held business that is growing, we're going to have a webinar on a lesson on the first 3 roles every growing small business should add. And there will be some great nuggets there, and we're working on that as we speak. So I'll just say thank you very much. Again, my name's Carl Baker. Feel free to reach out. My contact information is on the screen. You can also find even more information about our services at bakercfoadvisory.com. Again, I ask you to subscribe to our channel, like this webinar, share it. The more it gets shared, the more people will benefit from it. It will help our channel. I watch YouTube videos, and it's kind of annoying to say that, but it's just a truth that as we're building a following, that happens by people sharing, liking the videos. And so we just ask you to participate in that way. If it has added value, if there's anything that we can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, we will say thank you until next time, and God bless. Bye-bye.